Jeremiah chapter 49. We're going to be going several places in Scripture, so get ready to take notes, or if you like to get those after service, that's fine too. We're going to give you a lot of information tonight, okay? So we're going to talk about what's going on. Now, to us, in our nucleus, what happened Saturday night didn't come as a surprise, did it? When all the missiles was launched from Iran, because we knew that, according to Scripture, that this has to escalate, and it has. Now, some dates you need to remember. One is April the 22nd, which is, today's the 18th, so it'll be Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in there, is Passover. This is the only time I can remember where Passover and Easter is so far apart. And I can't find anybody to tell me why that is. That's a whole different subject, but Passover is the 22nd. I'm reading all kinds of things about the sacrifices of the red heifer that's supposed to be taking place, and nobody can give you a straight answer. One will say it'll happen on Passover. One will say it'll happen in spring. One will say that the government has put a stop to it. And these are all leaders in people that I have confidence in. So it's being kind of a hush-hush thing. But I don't believe we'll make it to summer before the red heifers are sacrificed because of their age. Once they get to be so old, they're not worthy to be sacrificed. And this is, you understand, this is only the 10th time since Moses that they've done this. Since Moses. And it's the first time since before Jesus was born that this has been done. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD. So this is paramount, and this is right in front of us. This is happening with us watching. Now, I encourage you, and I don't think I have to tell you guys this, but if you watch secular news outlets, especially the Clinton News Network, CNN and MSNBC and the like, you're not going to get an answer. Matter of fact, MSNBC, I believe it was, or maybe it was NBC, did a special on the red heifer, and all they did was make fun of the Jews. Just made fun of them. So if you're going to get your facts, you're going to have to get it from a source you can trust. And I'm going to give you a couple of names as we go through the class of people that I have confidence in, okay? People that, groups or people that I have confidence in, especially when we talk about some of the Dead Sea Scrolls things we're going to get into a little bit, who I have confidence in. One guy is the absolute most intelligent on the Dead Sea Scrolls there ever is, but he will put you to sleep in 30 seconds if you don't pay attention. And I'm not going to say his name now, so when I say it later, they're not associated, okay? But he is amazing, amazing. So what's the big deal about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Well, I just shared with Jeanette, God prophesied that they would be found. And those that read them, that Christians or religious people would look at us like we had the devil. It says that in the Scripture, and I can show you that Scripture after class if you'd like. I shared it with Jeanette a little bit ago. Pretty cool. There's all different levels of maturity, and I thank God that you guys are here that we can kind of move up some rungs, because some of this stuff is pretty intense, right? So tonight we're going to talk about Iran. Let me give you some definitions, okay? In Scripture, the nation of Iran is Persia. Persia. There's a very important king that come out of Persia, and he let the children of Israel go back to their homeland, and through that prophecy was fulfilled. And I can show you in Scripture where God blessed them because of that king was so faithful. God says, I will give you the treasures of the earth in the hidden dark places of the earth. And that is oil. The very first place to find the very first oil well ever drilled on planet earth was drilled in Iran, because God kept his word, because they let God's children go back. Pretty cool, huh? Now, a region in the area of Persia, which is southwest, which is down close to the Gulf, is called Elam. E-L-A-M, Elam, which is a certain area of Persia. So Persia is the nation. Elam is like a region, like we would say the Rocky Mountain region or the Midwest. This would be a region. It's down by the Gulf. It's where a lot of the oil is loaded onto barges, shipped out. It is also where the nuclear facilities are. and it's where a lot of the rocket launchers, the more high-tech rocket launchers come from. Not a lot of those was launched from this area in Elam. They sent out the cheap stuff. How many knows that? They sent out the Scud missiles. How many remember hearing about Scud missiles back years ago in Iraq? So they wouldn't send out their best necessarily. Their best is down in Elam, which is a province of southwestern Iran. All right, so if that makes sense, we're going to get into the lesson and watch how this works. See how God's operating now that we've seen some things that's happening. Verse 34 of Jeremiah 49. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against Elam. So he says this is against Elam. This is bad news, not good news. Would you agree? Against is not good. In the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, saying. So this is Jeremiah lived in the days of Zedekiah. That simply say that's when the prophecy was given. Now let's look what it says. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. He says in this scripture, verse number 35, and you're going to want to write this down, that the bow would be the power horse, or the power source, I should say, of Elam or Iran. The bow is something that does what? Shoots things in the air. Right? So let's read this and break this verse down. So what God is saying is, behold, I will break the bow. In other words, the launcher of the arrows will be attacked. So here's a prophecy that's about to come to pass. God says, I am going to break your air defense. I'm going to break not your air defense, your air offense, your air attack. I'm going to destroy it. So this is something that's coming in the future. This has not happened yet. Notice this. God goes on and describes that Iran's most powerful weapon is their air force or their air missiles, whatever it may be. The chief of their might. How many see that? Does everybody see that? God is saying, Elam, you have put your trust in what you can launch into the air. But I'm going to destroy the bow. I'm going to destroy the literal place where they come launched from. Is it not cool that it's just coincidental that Israel's air defense that has been proved to be 98% effective against air defense is called the arrow defense? Isn't that just God's way of saying, I'm trying to tell y'all something. Arrow 1, arrow 2, arrow 3. Arrow 2 and arrow 3 was put in force, and they shot down, Brother Mike and I was talking about this, they shot down just about everything that come into the area that was left over from what the other countries didn't get. And it was called the arrow defense. And here it is, God said, I'm going to destroy the bow. Pretty cool, huh? I love how God does little things like that just to let you know he's still on the throne. All right? So this is something in the future, though. This is not talking about what was being launched into Israel. This is talking about Israel going to do a counteractive move against. I'm going to show you this. And what God says in Scripture is that this will be done by a military thing later in Scripture. Okay, so you'll see that in a minute. God says, and upon Elam will I bring the four winds of the four quarters of the heaven, and I will scatter them towards all those winds, and there shall be no nation, whether the outcast of Elam shall not come. God's saying that it's going to come as from all corners. It's going to come, and when it hits, it's going to be so destructive that nobody can live there. Everybody that's there is going to have to leave. And look what it says. And there shall be no nation, whether the outcast of Elam shall not come. What God is saying, that this event is going to be so catastrophic that all nations on earth will have to take in refugees. Let that sink in. Now, this is not Chris talking. This is God talking. Okay? I want you to also catch the four winds. How many's ever seen videos of a nuclear bomb going off? What's the first thing that goes out? That wave, that wind. And it goes out from every direction, does it not? Doesn't this sound a little bit like what God maybe is trying to say here? Can you imagine what would happen if the nuclear reactor went off in Elam or southwestern Iran, what it would be like. It would be describing this verse, would it not? And Elam will I bring the four winds. It will scatter in all directions. The four quarters of heaven, and will scatter them toward all those, and I will scatter them towards all those winds. And there shall be no nation where the outcast of Elam shall not come. This is a prophecy. I believe this is the best way to describe it. There's now prophecies, there's next prophecies, and then there's last prophecies. Okay? And somebody who I'll talk about a little bit later wrote 3 books. One called The Now Prophecies. His name is Bob Salas. And we'll talk more about him and give you some of his information. Bob Salas, I'm sorry, I pronounced his name wrong. But he talks about the now, the next, and the last. Now prophecies are things that can happen right now, anytime. Next prophecies are prophecies that will happen during tribulation or right before tribulation. The last prophecies are the Battle of Armageddon and the things that surrounded the Battle of Armageddon. We are in the now prophecies. This, I believe, is a now prophecy. You will see these things happen. If you die of old age or get raptured, you're going to see this happen. The world is going to go nuts. And we're going to be looking and saying, this is what thus saith God. It's going to be an awesome opportunity to be a witness. To your family, they're going to be talking about it. When they talk about it, tell them, can I show you in the Bible where God said this was going to happen? And be very bold. Because we're in the now prophecies. The next prophecies are tribulation time. We won't be here for that. Any questions so far? Y'all looking at me pretty hard tonight. You soaking it up? Okay. Any questions about scattered to the four winds, or this could possibly be, God could do something in and of himself, he's God. But it sounds to me like it could be, God says there will be no nuclear attack on my Israel, and it's destroyed. There are 3 or 4 things that I've heard from Israel, reading the Jerusalem Post, the TV Channel 7 out of Jerusalem, watching these things and watching some of these things. There's 3 or 4 things that they said that Israel has on the table. One is to destroy the launching stations of Iran's rockets. Well, that kind of fit that first part of that verse, did it not? Second is an EMP over Iran, electromagnetic pulse. And Brother Mike could give you a better description of what that does to me, but it fries all things electronic. They wouldn't be able to function. They wouldn't be able to talk on the cell phone. They wouldn't be able to launch their missiles. They wouldn't be able to have electricity. They wouldn't be able to, they would be dead in the water. Now, true that in America that would hurt us a lot more than it would Iran, but it would still cripple Iran. Okay? Something else is they talked about is taking out all of Iran's navy. It's not a very big navy, but they've talked about taking out their navy. And the last one is taking out key leaders in Iran. Israel knows where everybody's at. I assure you, they know where you're at. If you're on their list, they know where you are. And if you remember just recently, what started all this is Israel went after one of the top generals in the Iran military. Okay? So we don't know what God's going to do, but we know that God's going to do something. This is prophetic. Now look at verse 37. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies. Iran has a lot of enemies. Saudi Arabia is an enemy. Jordan is an enemy. Jordan, if you remember, Jordan jumped in the fight. Of course, they was going over their airspace and shot down some of the missiles that was launched from Iran. Nations all over the earth. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror on planet Earth. I'm no doubt, I believe that there's probably sales here in the United States. With the open borders we have, it would be almost foolish for us to think that's not the case. They've got enemies everywhere. So it will say that we'll be dismayed, so their enemies will be able to watch it. This is a now prophecy for this reason. How could all the enemies see it unless it was done today? We have all the technology. I mean, we're recording ourselves tonight, go out all over the world, right? And before them, they that seek their life, and I will bring evil upon them. So God's going to be behind it in some capacity. You're going to learn in a little bit that Israel's going to have a part in it as well. Even my fierce anger, saith the Lord, and I will send the sword after them. When God says I will send the sword, he says that's military. God's going to send the military after them, okay? And I will set my throne in Elam. God says, I'm going to take over, take charge. Now, underline that phrase, because that phrase means nothing until we get in the book of Daniel. That's where we're going next. And Jerry's ears just perked up. There's something very important about the book of Daniel that ties to that phrase. I will set my throne in Elam, and I will destroy from thence the king and the princess, saith the Lord. Please get that verse. Okay? Verse 38 is the most important verse we're going to talk about tonight. It's the springboard into what we're going into next. God says, I'm going to destroy the kings and the princes. Well, you may think, first of all, that is the leadership of Iran. Well, they don't have kings and princes. Matter of fact, their kings and princes are exiled and they're in the United States. A lot of you may not know that, but they ran for their lives back when, remember the days of the Shah and all the royalty of Iran left, when it became a theocracy. You know what a theocracy is? That means that they're run by a religion now. They're not run by a government of the people or even a communist government. They are run by a theocracy, a doctrine. And the Iranian doctrine, by the way, put this in your memory bank. Iran believes that the destruction of Israel will begin the last Mahdi, M-A-D-I. That's the last high ruler of Islam. The last, like Muhammad. The last Mahdi is who they will adopt and accept, and that will be the Antichrist. So the Jews and the Muslims are all looking for the same person but don't know it. And it will be the Antichrist, and he will have the answer for both religions. And he'll fool them all for a while. Not for long, but for a while. Then he'll go into the temple, proclaim himself to be Christ, do away with religion, except for worship of him, and things go downhill bad quick for Israel and all religion then. Can I get a little, can I chase a rabbit for a second? Do I have your permission? When you get into the book of Revelation and you see that the woman adorned, who's the harlot, what God calls her, riding on the beast is the world economic system run by the Antichrist. The woman on it is the religious system. The beast will turn on the woman and destroy it, and that'll happen right after. So religious systems will be dissolved except for worship of the Antichrist. Okay, but it'll use those two religions, many others, but primarily those two, to springboard into power. He will have the answers to make both Israel and the Muslims happy. He's going to be slick, very slick. And he's not going to have horns and a pitchfork. He is going to be the most eloquent, respectable man that you've ever met. And he will fool a lot of people. Good news, we won't be here. If you know Jesus, we won't be here. All right, so when I say this phrase, I will set my throne in Elam, and I will destroy from thence the king and the princess, saith the Lord. Okay, let me go to the next verse, and then we're going to jump to Daniel, all right? But it shall come to pass when? In the latter days, the end times. And I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith the Lord. All right, Daniel. Turn over to Daniel with me. Then we're going to go to Ezekiel before we close out. So we'll look at Daniel chapter 10. Now, let me set the stage. Daniel has been praying for 3 weeks. He's not eaten anything that would bring pleasure to him. He has been weeping. He has been sick because he's waiting on an answer from God. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, no answer. Daniel is the man that's used to praying and hearing from God. But for 3 weeks, no answer. Now, when I read this, guaranteed a bell's going to go off in your head, okay? Remember what I read, that verse I said, don't forget, I will set back in Elam, which is Persia. I will take back and destroy their kings and princes, and I'll take control back. Here we go. Verse 12. This is Gabriel speaking, okay? You'll learn that later in Scripture. This is who we're talking about. This is Gabriel. This is the messenger angel. He was coming with a message to Daniel. And this is what the Gabriel tells Daniel, okay? What? Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. So here's what Gabriel says. Gabriel says, on the very first day you prayed, God heard you. And I was dispatched to come to you. Well, where's he been for 3 weeks? Verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Did the bell go off? Satan's power seat is in Iran. Now here's the part that you haven't thought about, I don't think. This war between Iran and Israel is not fleshly. It's demonic. Y'all getting this? This is Iran, one of the power seats, according to this scripture. There's other places we can take you. This whole chapter, the rest here on talks about it, is where there's kings and princes of the demonic realm under the auspices of Satan himself.